haere mai e te whānau. Welcome to the Flight of the Next podcast. My name's Holly. I'm on Gadigal land in Sydney, as is Danny. It's just the two of us today. I hope that Alex and Erin haven't blown away in the hurricane and that everybody is feeling safe and secure at home in New Zealand. We will talk about the men versus City game. First of all, having broken the Amy curse last weekend, we were hoping that we could get another run at putting a distance between us and the curse. Unfortunately, not to be. A 2-0 loss. 27th minute goal for City. Bayic, it does take a deflection off Hughes, to be fair. Maybe Joshy had a better crack at that otherwise, but either way, it's a goal. 76th minute, they double their lead with Eunice. Cohen plays this pass really wide, and he just slips away from Edwards. It was very close to being offside. I think I would have loved to have seen the lines. I'm assuming that they did run the lines over it, and that it was just that Eunice got a bit of a head start on Edwards. Either way, another goal. I think one of the other talking points was like how in the 44th was that not a dog-so handball by Ferreira. He intentionally lifts his hand and pushes the ball away, and I know it's outside of the box, but I think that VAR should look at that because that's potentially a dog-so situation. And you know what? He would have been off because he got another yellow card later on, even if it was just given as a yellow card then. I'm also not sure about why Azani stayed on the pitch. Potentially could have been 2 yellows there. It is what it is. We lost XG of 2.09, shots 16-6, 5 on target to 0 on target. So that's a bit telling. We had 0 on target. Lots of fouls for City, 15-9, 4 yellows for City. Probably could have been more to 1 yellow for us. The Vicnics were very loud. Unfortunately, the way that City sets up their fan sections for Amy Park, you can't actually see the Vicnics or the away fans at City games, but they were there in numbers and they were to be heard. So well done to all of the Vicnics. Danny, what were you thinking?
This was like a game of old, wasn't it? This is an old Phoenix at Amy Park. Well organised, didn't play particularly badly. Not very cutting edge, and just one of the Melbourne teams with just a little bit more quality to finish their goals. This wasn't a bad performance. We basically tried to do exactly what we did to Victory last week, and we just weren't able to do it. We just weren't quite onto those second balls as we were last week. The passing wasn't quite as crisp as it was last week, but we were running basically exactly the same game plan as we were. We should basically try and get first onto the second balls. A lot of hard work and then hoping something will break for us in the final third. And this week it didn't particularly. And City were probably a little bit better than, probably a fair bit better than Victory were last week. It doesn't mean they destroyed us or ran over us. We had more of the play in the first half, and I heard one stat towards the end of the first half where they looked at entries into the final third, and we had something like 3 times as many entries in the final third as City did. But then they talked about number of touches in the box, and City had 4 times as many touches in the box as we did. So the play was up their end of the pitch. We managed to do that, but we weren't able to create anything very clear to create sort of decent shots and goals or decent chances. And that's it. The way that we were playing, and this was the same last week, but we managed it last week, we don't really create many chances through great play. We don't pass around, and we don't open up spaces by clever passing or formations. We're relying on hard work, we're relying on players fighting hard, going after every single tiny little ball, even if it's only 20% chance, and trying to get that ball and hoping something will develop from that because we're up in that end of the pitch. And to be honest, we've got the players to do that. The number of times Eze and Piper got a ball which they had absolutely no right to get because, a City player had it or it was, a long way in front of them. But because they just work so hard and never give up, the number of times they would beat their man or get past their man or bounce them was great. And that's awesome to see, but it's not a well-created chance. So even when they did that, there wasn't maybe someone there in the box for them to cross to, or the cross wasn't quite there, or they'd won that ball, but, by the time they'd won that, City got back in position. So we weren't creating good chances, although we were working really hard and we were very well organised. we just weren't creating the chances to really trouble their goalkeeper. Whereas City had that little bit more class in the box. I mean, I hate to say it, but Azani's obviously got very good techs and he's got good feet. So when the ball comes to him in the box, you're in trouble, and we saw that when Bajic, coming those deep runs, they were just more dangerous when they did get the ball up our end, which was, as we said, less than us, but they were just more dangerous. And eventually, one of those was probably going to go in, despite people throwing their bodies in the way. And it was in the end Hughes throwing his body in the way that deflected it past Josh for that first goal. And I think, to be honest, when that goal went in, I thought that was it. I just couldn't really see us coming back and scoring a lot of goals because we just weren't creating the chances. And we know that Greenacre doesn't really go for it as such. He's so far he's been a pretty conservative coach. This time he went for it, if you like, a little bit earlier, 70 minutes, some subs. But the previous week, he's been leading the subs to like the last 5 or 10. It's not how he set his teams up. He sets his team up to be difficult to play against, be very organised, be extremely hardworking, keeping formations where he wants them to be. Players doing just the simple things and not really throwing any caution to the winds. We don't have any creative players, which is probably why he's doing it this way, because as we know, creative players tend to injure themselves the minute they step off a plane in Wellington. So he's doing it for the right reasons, but it does mean that we don't have much going forward, realistically. Dan Edwards on the left, as a left back, does well, but offered nothing going forward at all. And Tim Payne, we know he can get forward, but he wasn't really getting forward very much in this match because that's not the way we're set up to do that. So when they go ahead like that, it's always going to be difficult for us to get 1 goal or 2 goals back. And that's the way it seemed. And even when we did, start bringing on some more attacking players in terms of Armiento and Lou Brooks-Smith, it was just too late where, we just weren't able to do anything. So, as I say, I don't think we played badly. I think some players played well. Eze and Piper, as I say, are just great to watch. And to see the City players nearly coming to blows because, they're saying, why didn't you tackle him? So, because it's Eze, and he's very hard to tackle, and he will take the ball off you, even when he shouldn't, and you have to fight against him or else you lose. So that was good to see. I thought Najrin was good in the second half, anonymous in the first half. Rufer, just so important for this team. Just so important. Without him, we don't get close to any team, I don't think. Just watching him going to the tackles like everyone else, he knows what he's going to do when he wins that tackle, whereas I think the other players, they win the tackle, they get the ball, and then decide what to do with it. He knows exactly where that ball's going once he wins that tackle, and he assumes he's going to win that tackle. And often he tackles to win the ball and make sure the ball goes in the right direction to someone else. Just so important. This entire team relies on him an awful lot. Nagasaya he was all right, a little bit quieter, possibly. And defensively, we were okay. I think we were probably better when Sheridan came on. I thought Tim Payne didn't have his best half. He came in the first half, and I was thinking in the first half, I wouldn't mind Sheridan coming on because I thought Sheridan last week was really good. This week, probably a little bit quieter, but the whole team was. So, wasn't a bad match. We were beaten by a team that's slightly better than us. I think we probably did as well as we realistically could. But, that's the nature, I think, of the players we've got. I think Chris Greenacre has put them out to play pretty much as well as they could without getting beaten badly, but it does mean that we're not going to win the games that we might do occasionally. So this is not a Chiefy side where we win some games and score a lot of goals, but then also get spanked maybe a week later. This is a team that is going to do the very best it can, simply work very hard, be very well organised, but it means we don't really have that much to throw at another side when we need to go for it. We don't really have that much to do it. So, and a team that's City are a decent side. They're getting a lot better. They recruited a lot in the January window, and those recruits are now coming through and pushing them at the table. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them go quite deep into the finals. Whereas ourselves, that's pretty much it for finals now, unfortunately. It was a nice late season sort of run, but we've got 2 games left. I'd be interested to see what Greenacre does now, whether he goes, okay, I've done what I could. I tried with the players we've got. Let's release some of the younger players. Let's release some of the more exciting players and maybe go for it in the last 2 matches. Be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, technically speaking, we mathematically could still make the top 6, but we would have to win both of our games. And the Carth is a 3-pointer, but we've lost the 3-pointer against City, so it's highly, highly unlikely that that's going to be the case. Let's talk about the next game. So Wanderers, I believe, yes, I think oh no, they haven't quite guaranteed themselves wooden spoon. They could actually escape the wooden spoon, Wanderers, but they have, despite having actually some very good players, that club's just fallen apart. They'll double wooden spoon this season. The women wooden spoon, the men wooden spoon. That club really feels pretty down and out at the moment, I think, which is sad for our Wanderers friends. We had our penultimate game at home versus Wanderers for the women's team, and they beat us. So we'll see what happens, but it should be a good game. This one's going to be in Christchurch, so do get along if you can. That is this Saturday, April 18th, 5 p.m. New Zealand time. That's at Apollo Project Stadium in Christchurch. It's always fun to take a trip sort of outside of Wellington. I know that it sort of sucks for Wellington-based fans that they would then have to travel when it's a home game. But I do like when we travel and just do that one extra game. I really hope the women can have a game in Christchurch next season. We have so many current and former Knicks players who came from Christchurch and the Canterbury area. Either way, you know what? We should beat Western Sydney Wanderers. We're at home. We want to put on a good show for Christchurch. I don't know what will actually happen. Danny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, if we do want to make finals, yes, we have to win our next 2 matches, but we also need City to lose both their next 2 matches. I actually think we can win our next 2 matches. I think we possibly will, but I don't think City are going to drop 6 points in the next 2 matches, which is why I don't think we're going to make the finals. Look, we've seen that Greenacre can get almost the best out of this team, and if we play as well as we did against City and against Victory, we will win, because Western Sydney Wanderers are not a good side. And if we play with a kind of hard work and real commitment and getting to those second balls, as we have done in the past couple of weeks, we'll create enough that I think we probably will score the goals, and I think we'll win. So I'm fairly confident, to be honest, reasonably confident about this Western Sydney game, and sort of vaguely confident against the Macarthur game, just because we always seem to beat them. But Western Sydney Wanderers, yeah, just in terms of a club, what is going on there? It's just, it's sort of sad and it's funny, but I don't think it's good for the league, to be honest. Western Sydney Wanderers should be one of the bigger clubs in the league, and if you want the league to be successful, much as we might laugh at their misfortune, they need to be doing fairly well for this league to be doing well. They're an interesting example of how having money and throwing money at stuff doesn't always work. And I know there's plenty of Knicks fans who would for the Knicks to throw more money at stuff, even if we don't necessarily have that money. But there's often that thing where we just need to buy better players or stop players getting signed by someone else. Quite often, Western Sydney Wanderers, and everything will be fine. But I think we've seen that in this league, having money, yes, it's important. Of course, it is, but it's not the be all and end all. Western Sydney Wanderers, I've got a list of players there that we would kill for, as did Sydney last season, and neither of them are going to make the finals. And similarly with their managers, Western Sydney Wanderers, they just throw money at the next person who's on the ranks, which at this stage is Ufuk Talay. And I wouldn't put Talay's a good manager, we know he is, but I wouldn't put money in succeeding because I don't know, people just don't succeed there. There's something going wrong there at Wanderers in the back. I'm not sure what it is. And that's why, I think the temptation just to go, okay, well, money will solve all the Knicks' problems. And, the Knicks, are not spending enough, and all we need to do is to show more ambition. And by ambition, obviously, they need more money. That's not necessarily the solution, which is one reason why I think Greenacre should probably get the job. Because I think to be the kind of club that builds from within and rewards loyalty and has that kind of identity, identity as a club is probably more important than just throwing money at stuff, especially when you don't have the money, which we don't have the money the way that some other teams do. So, we could appoint another manager again, just look at who's the best manager out there with money, and Postecoglou, anyone, and throw money at that, but it doesn't mean it's going to be successful. Which is why I think Greenacre, although I've not been hugely excited by his teams as they come out, he's done a decent job. And we don't actually know what he's going to do next season. He might be doing a decent job because that's the best thing to do with the team he's got. Who knows next season what might happen. But yeah, Western Sydney Wanderers, just really, really sad in some ways because, again, there's some good players there that I would like to succeed. Barbarouses, I would have liked him to have a good season before he goes to the World Cup. Kraev, I think is a great player to watch when he's on form. It would be nice to see him do well, and he's, been wasted this year. But, if that means we get 3 points in Christchurch, then, yeah, let's hope they struggle down the doldrums for a bit longer.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how things happen. I would like to see, if we're rewarding loyalty and good performance, an announcement for Alex Rufer being re-signed because he is pivotal, and if he is somehow let go by the Knicks, I think that would be an enormous shame. So let's talk briefly about our Ferns. They played Fiji on Saturday. That was the semi-final for the OFC playoffs for Brazil 2027. That was in Hamilton. We had a 5-0 win, 4 goals in the first half from Brown, Taylor, Foster, Kitching, 1 goal in the second half from Blake. The goals were well worked, or they were poached off of a well-worked play. Thinking of Kelly Brown's one, for example, Jale shot parried. I think that actually Fiji did a pretty good job. They were pretty tenacious in defence, but obviously, at the end of the day, outclassed. Katie Kitching was awarded player of the match. She got the 1 goal and a lot of shots. I was not happy to see that Pia Vlok and Emma Pijnenberg are injured and have come back to, have left camp and won't be playing on Wednesday, which is, I'm a little bit frustrated to see some of our starters be injured, but this is kind of the risk you take when you play more games. The final will be on Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. kickoff New Zealand time. That is at North Harbour Stadium in Auckland versus PNG. I figured American Samoa would beat PNG, but that is not the case. Now, I believe that the loser of this final gets an Interconfederation qualification spot. I believe PNG got it last time as well, and I think it was in Hamilton, the little playoffs that they had, which is kind of a nice way to do it. So that might be in Brazil next time as well. Either way, there will be a second crack for whoever loses that game. Danny, you watched a little bit of the game. How did you feel and thoughts about PNG?
Yeah, look, these games are always difficult, really, to talk about because you expect to win, so it's hard to judge a lot from it. You watch it, you're going to win. It's a matter of how many goals, and is 5 goals a lot, or should we have had 8? Would a 3-0 win have been a disappointment? So I guess you're just looking at trying to get a bit of performance and trying to see sort of maybe combinations between players and who look sort of sharp and on it. And look, the Ferns look pretty good in attack. Katie Kitching, I've always liked. She does look good. Like many of their players, it's sometimes hard to judge them against a good side because we just don't get to play really good sides that often. And when we do, they're often a lot better than us. So, again, then our attack doesn't get to see much of the ball. But, that's just the nature of being a New Zealand football fan. Same for the men's as well. Look, Fiji tried hard, but they're amateurs. They're not professional players. They don't get to play at this level very often, and you could see that. And especially, and this is often the case in women's football, goalkeeping quality just wasn't there. So goals go in, and we got 5. So that's great, no surprise. And we move on to PNG again. We should be beating them. I expect them to be a tougher ask. They have more of a footballing tradition, I guess, as a nation. But again, realistically, anything other than a comfortable victory would be a disappointment. Disappointing, obviously, with Pia Vlok and Pijnenberg. Hopefully, they've got a fair bit of time to recover before finals, so let's hope they do. But again, that's the nature of international football. It happens. I've heard some people saying, well, we shouldn't have released them. It's like, well, actually, you don't have a choice. It's not a friendly. FIFA regulations say you have to release them. And realistically, it's international football. It's bigger and more important than club football. So, to deny Pia Vlok a cap, I think, would be wrong. Same with Emma Pijnenberg. I'm sure they'd want to play and be there. And it's not just about the games and results. It's about the training camp as well. Getting in there, getting in Michael Main's foot. So he knows that when he's picking the World Cup squad, they're right up there in his mind. So it happens. Hopefully they're not serious. Hopefully they'll be back for finals. And I'm hoping and expecting the Ferns to be reasonably comfortable about against PNG. And if PNG get a trip to Brazil to play against, I don't know who else, well, yeah, good for them. But they enjoy that too.
Yeah, no, I'm a little bit facetious complaining about getting, injured on Ferns duty. Obviously, it is what it is. You can get injured. I mean, you could get injured getting off the bus or crossing the road. It's just sort of unfortunate at this very moment, heading into finals with our first game being a couple of weeks away. Yeah, we'll see what happens. So tune in for the men next week and for the women on Wednesday, and we'll have a chat about those games when we get back. Thank you, everyone.